Welcome everybody to the panel of Health and Medicine. And we're really excited to have a series of panelists today, Betsy, Nick, and Ben. And so they're basically graduated from our department and they used chemical engineering in different fields. And now they're in the area of health and medicine. So I would actually like to bring them on stage and have them introduce themselves. So Betsy, if you could say a little bit about yourself and how ChemE played a role in your journey so far. Yeah.
Of course, my name is Betsy Barrios. I live in Seattle, Washington. And I currently work at Just Evotech Biologics, which is a biologic manufacturer. I'm originally from Venezuela. I'm half Colombian, half Venezuelan, and I graduated from ChemE in 2016. I currently work as a technical operations process engineer. This team is also referred as like an MSAT group in the industry. It's called Manufacturing Science and Technology. In this current role, I transfer processes from development scale, so bioreactor sizes of 1 liter to 2 liter, to production scale, which is 500 to 1,000 liter bioreactors and their corresponding purification processes. My role specifically focuses on the scaling, performance analytics, and sizing of the biologics processes using continuous manufacturing, specifically around the purification steps. What we mean by continuous a lot of the time is that we convert batch processes, which typically use 1 large column that do not make full use of a column's resin and their capacity, and we design a continuous process that allows for maximum column efficiency, and improve resin capacity through continuous loading. And this is done by multiple small columns that operate in series over a large number of cycles. So that's kind of the broader scope of my position.
Yeah. Thank you, Betsy. We are really excited to have you here on the panel. And Nick, if you could go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience.
So I'm Nick Cox. I'm Associate Director of Discovery Chemistry at the Novo Nordisk Research Center in Seattle, Washington, where I've lived for most of my professional life. I graduated from UW ChemE in 2007, and then I went on to get a PhD from the chemistry department also at UW, and then kind of broke into medicinal chemistry during my postdoc, and that was a little bit of my path into the biopharmaceutical world. So right now I manage a team of chemists. We cover early stage drug research across a wide variety of therapy areas, and the research center that I work at is one of many global satellite research centers that Novo Nordisk has. So, you know, day to day, we're more focused on developing novel chemical matter that could help us in discovering novel drug targets, or in maturing that chemical matter towards lead candidates, so potential drugs that could enter the clinic. And I would say that on a day-to-day, you know, my application of the things that I covered in chemical engineering might seem limited, but it actually is pretty significant. One of the ways in which we still, you know, apply those principles is that the sorts of molecules that we try to engineer, we engineer them so that they can be compatible with manufacturing scale. And we think a lot about process development and technology innovation on the chemistry side as well. So I'll leave it there. But thank you for the invitation, and I look forward to talking to you all.
Yeah, thank you, Nick. We're really excited to have you. And now we would like to welcome Ben to give her introduction to the audience.
Hi, my name is Bin Deng, and I think the order of the introduction is kind of perfect. That helped my introduction a lot because I always have a hard time telling people what I do. So I am currently working as a process engineer at IPS, Integrated Project Services. We are a design and build engineering service company. So basically, oh, and I graduated from UW in 2017. I was also a member of NAN's lab. I'd love to mention that. Anyway, so what we do is, in order of production, we have Nick's here doing research on drug, and then we have Betsy doing the scale up. So what we do is actually building the facility so that Betsy process can produce products that meet with FDA requirement. So that's basically the broader scope. In terms of using my chemical engineering knowledge, I think I actually got to use quite a lot because of what I do. So, you know, in ChemE course, eventually we'll learn how to, you know, working with a lot of equipment such as heat exchanger, piping, etc. You know, flow calculation. And those are the things that I actually do in my job, sizing heat exchanger, doing pressure relief valve sizing, generating drawing for a manufacturing plan. So all of that. However, depend on the product or the company, or, you know, because there is biotech work with biologics like Betsy, but there's also a traditional pharmaceutical company that, you know, like making vaccines. So those are two different type of process or entity of its own. Because of that, depend on the project that I'm working on or the client, my day-to-day is a little different. Sometimes we mostly, you know, doing relocating lab equipment, or you know, building new utility around a facility, or sometimes we'll do a lot of different other stuff like working with large reactor, like, you know, 2,000, 3,000 liter reactor, doing a lot of hands-off. Like we also do that in ChemE eventually. So basically, you learn everything along the way. Yeah, so that's what I do.
What does your day-to-day really look like in your current role? Like, what kind of activities do you do in your day-to-day with respect to your role?
Okay, so day to day, there's a lot of people interaction actually. So I now working with a team of chemists. There's no one particular project where I have the greatest amount of influence. So it's about helping a lot of um, people on my teams to mature projects and ideas, design experiments, interface with project stakeholders. I mean, there's a lot of um, of keeping to a timeline, right? So it is applied research. So my day to day, I think it involves a lot more people interaction now than it ever did, which is still a lot of fun. It presents its own challenges at times because human beings are complicated, but it's also really inspiring and exciting to work with people. So yeah, there's a lot of I would say you know, making sure we can apply the right attention and the right expertise to solve the right problems, and you know, we can't do everything. So I think it's about balancing a lot of the priorities and the interests that people have. I mean, I work with scientists and engineers, and it's very easy for people to get very excited about their science, right? But knowing we can't do everything, we have to make sure that we kind of direct energy to the right places that'll meet the needs, because it's for us about making sure that we're you know, sort of always having patients, right? The end product for us, right, is not necessarily getting a drug on the market, right? But it's actually treating patients with a critical disease. So we have to stay as focused as we can on that sort of thing.
Okay, so I would summarize that with basically people interaction and how to coordinate different priorities and use that technique and keep that broader impact in mind while you're making the decisions.
Perfect.
Yeah, Betsy or Ben, do you want to contribute to that? Like, what does your day-to-day look like?
Yeah, I think Nick definitely hit the nail on the head. It's really funny, I think, when you think of working as a ChemE, people is not the thing. People is just not what comes to your mind, the first thing, but it is a big part of that. And I think this is just across all industries, because a lot of the time you are working as a team, you're contributing, and not only that, but you're making joint decisions together. And so what I would add is, I mean, I think I'm a little bit involved depending on what the projects are. I mean, we're either designing like novel methods to do something, but it could be, you know, retrofitting something into an existing piece of equipment, or validating, commissioning a piece of equipment to run a process we haven't run before. Creating signals so that we capture the data and making sure that that can be validated. And it's those big tasks along with small tasks in terms of like coordinating with project stakeholders in terms of like, do we have the automation we need? Do we have the materials we need? Do we have the process parameters developed? Do we have commissioning validation in mind? And do we have any sort of other procedures, training that has to go in the facility, as well as deployment, right? Like things like proof of concept engineering runs, kind of things like that. But a lot of, and this is why I keep coming back to Nick's thing, it takes a village, is I think what you, you're always steering in terms of having product impact, assessing what the long-term solutions could be, what the short-term solutions can be, and how you best mitigate in between in order to meet, you know, a work constraint or a timeline. So I think that's a big part of day-to-day interactions. Yeah.
Yeah. Then would you like to contribute, or is that, yeah.
I would like to add a little more. Because Betsy and Nick perspective is within their organization. So I would love to offer my perspective. So basically, because we provide services for Betsy and Nick here, I actually get to work with a very big, or not very big, but like sometimes different team. And that's including architect, mechanical engineer, electrical engineer, and you know, and that's within my organization. And then we got to work with our client, which is Betsy and Nick's company here. And then, you know, sometimes there's also involvement of construction contractor, because we could not, if their company decides to go with a different contractor, then we, you know, we support those people as well. So the people aspect is definitely very prominent, no, regardless where you go. And it's, you know, it really shapes you as a person to work with that many people from different perspectives. You know, like just Nick is laughing because he's only you work with scientists and engineers. I mean, think about like working with everyone else. It's yeah, it's the greater the people skill, the better your job gonna be.
Perfect. So I'm just summarizing panelists' comments here is basically, how do you work with multiple people? How do you work in interdisciplinary teams? How do you come up with the exact pipeline of scaling something up and starting small and do it in a very systematic manner while keeping in mind the end product, right? So, I mean, that brings us to the second question, like in this whole process, how do you think, like what role ChemE has to play in your work right now? And like, how does ChemE inform what you're doing right now? Yeah, anybody
Some of
wants
that.
to?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like there's the ChemE answer is, or I guess the curriculum answer is we do apply everything we learned. I think, and it depends on a variety of disciplines. I think Nick explained that they are doing molecule engineering, and that, you know, his ChemE concepts drive into that. And then kind of touched on the unit ops and how they help you familiarize yourself with equipment, right? And getting performance that you may not have had before. So yeah, the curriculum answer is, you know, mass transfer, heat transfer, mass balances, like process controls. The curriculum definitely applies no matter where you go, but the overarching skills I think that ChemE provides are basically, it teaches you how to think critically with the tools you have on hand. And it gives you a good set, or at least it will give you a good set of assumptions that you can run off of so that you can start to solve a problem, or start thinking about a mitigation strategy, an assessment. And when you're, you know, when you're speccing out, when you're specifying equipment, when you're specifying a process, when you're performing data analytics, it helps you kind of run a sanity check on what you're doing, and thinking along each step of the way, what it does in the process, what that's doing to the product. And if a problem arises, then you have a very clear pathway of knowing, you know, what went wrong and why, or you at least have a section or a black box where you can isolate the problem and troubleshoot from there. And this applies in terms of working, you know, you work very dynamically with other people as well. So when we say you need communication aside from the curriculum, is that a lot of the time in whatever industry, you have to communicate your results or your thinking, your assumption paths to teams, and you have to do it to management in order to drive decisions. So I would probably say that that helps you think across scales, because you're communicating information for other people that are vested in different areas. So I think that those are great tools that you gain from ChemE, aside from the communication, presentation, and explaining your methodical thinking in your organization or across other organizations as well.
Perfect. Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Betsy, for that. And I would like to basically say, if Nick and Ben, you want to probably answer the next obvious connection here, is that when you were taking ChemE classes, was there something that you learned in the ChemE curriculum that piqued your interest in health and medicine?
Well, I don't know that there was something that piqued my interest at the time. I think that what was apparent is how relevant engineering was to engineering medicines. So I already I think came into my academic career thinking that I wanted to go into something related to pharma, but I wasn't quite sure what I wanted to do. And so there were a number of research opportunities. I remember working with Bruce Finlayson at the time on a research project as an undergrad that was actually sponsored by a biopharma company in the Seattle area. That was probably one of the first cases where I had exposure to the industry. And there it was clear that by doing some microfluidics modeling, you could start answering some important questions that company, for instance, was trying to figure out, that would be influencing how it does all of its automated research. So that I found pretty stimulating. But I would say I would echo what Betsy mentioned about the process for developing a project that one gains as an experience taking ChemE classes. I think there's a direct correlation with how one does applied research in just about any field. And it's the same thing that Betsy mentioned, right? It's stakeholder management, keeping projects on budget and on time, and always focused on the end goal.
Mhm. Yeah, so I mean, since you just said that you were always interested in the health and medicine side of things, even before you joined the degree program, so was it like, what was something specific that made you join chemical engineering as a major discipline?
So I was interested in chemistry, and engineering sounded harder. And I think that it also, at least at the time, my view was it could enable me to do a lot more things than if I had just pursued a chemistry degree. Now, um, that's obviously speculative, right? And you're talking about the decisions of a teenager. So, you know, uh, uh, was that the right call? I don't know. I don't regret getting an engineering degree. It is more challenging, I think. But I do think it gives you a set of experiences that um, are unique, and I think can enable you to tackle um, very challenging types of projects across really any field, right? So you can transition from ChemE into just about anything.
Yeah. Sounds good. Like, and Ben, if you would like to contribute, like, of whether something in chemie classes piqued your interest in health and medicine, and if you already were interested in health and medicine before, why did you choose chemie as a major?
So I, just like Nick, I actually, ever since I was in high school, I know that I want to, go into medicine. I wasn't sure what it is that I want to do. But while, I went to community college and kind of like explored my option for a bit. And it's only then that I decided, okay, I want to do engineering because it seems, you know, the other option was either chemistry or biology, but engineering seems to be more tangible in a way that you can see the final product in fairly, quick, or it's complicated. It's hard. And then I think I speak for a lot of people here that beside the fact that ChemE is, give me the most opportunity to go anywhere beside medicine, like as a backup plan. I think one of the contribution is that someone told me that it's the hardest discipline that you can do. and we're all like, okay, let's give it a try. So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that. And like kind of an extension to that, was there some set of extracurricular or curricular activities that you participated in during your stay here, which were related to health?
I mean, so I think that, so when I got into ChemE, I know that I want to do research, and I try out two different lab. One is with Professor Holmberg, and then after that is Professor Nan's lab in terms of research. And I had a lot of fun doing that. I think our ChemE department also very strong in terms of offering classes that expand on different fields, such as I know that some of my classmates taking, battery class, I think it's some class related to semiconductor. I took a lot of elective that focusing on, drugs, biology, and research, basically.
Yeah, Betsy or Nick, would you like to add to that?
Sure. So one thing that comes to mind, I don't know, it's not exactly an extracurricular act. Maybe it is an extracurricular activity, but I paid part of my tuition by working part-time at a company called Zymogenetics. which is a place where I actually interned in between my sophomore and junior year. And that was a really great experience. Getting the initial exposure in a low stakes way to see whether or not that type of company and that type of field is a good fit. And so I spent, yeah, the last, I'd say 2.5 years of my undergrad career at UW working part-time, just doing some simple things, working in the lab. Zymogenetics is now a company that was, I think, acquired by BMS, and now it's part of the Hutch, I think. But so it no longer exists, which is something you take on as an occupational hazard working in industry, right? Companies come and go. But it was really fun working there while I was an undergrad. It gave you an exposure to people really dedicated to their work every day because they knew that they were trying to cure a critical disease that affected lots of people. I think that was probably the most influential kind of extracurricular activity that I had that was related to the health space. And it was clear to me that with, you know, talented people working in an interdisciplinary field that includes engineering, right? You can accomplish some pretty awesome things. So
yeah. Betsy, would you like to?
Yeah, I think I had a couple of like pivoting moments, I think, that led me into looking into the health and medicine space. So I think a little similar to Ben, I had considered biochemistry or biology early on in my college career. And through the curriculum, I know I had done, it's not really an internship, I think you do like a volunteering opportunity with the UW Medical Center, where you get to kind of be on campus and service a different array of departments in the medical center. And through that, I had still been considering biology, but I started hearing of these cases. I mean, cases where, and I knew somebody, actually, I was acquainted with somebody that had a heart problem, required a heart transplant, but it's not as easy as like you get a new heart and you're fine. There's a lot of biologics and pharmaceuticals that come into play that help save a person's life past just, you know, a 12-hour successful surgery. So there's things like immunosuppressants that they rely on. There's coagulants, there's water retention pharmaceuticals. And I think that just kind of piqued my interest in the industry because I felt like it was such precise engineering to have the right responses from a patient and ultimately save their lives. So I kind of, that spoke to me. And then I think through the internship I had was more like service driven. It was more like a sales internship experience that I had. So that kind of confirmed to me that wasn't really like an opportunity that I was seeking to kind of delve into. I think it was more like more of a sales position. And I knew that I wanted to be more on the engineering background of the industry. So that kind of pivoted me into looking at specific opportunities.
Mm-hmm. Sounds good. And I think we will move on to the audience question in about a few seconds. So if you have any questions, just start thinking about those. And if you want to post them on the chat for people who are on Zoom, please feel free to do so. And while we are setting that up, if in one line, any of you or all of you would like to summarize what inspires you to be in the health space, right? Like, and in the meantime, if the participants, you can post your questions on the chat, please, that would be great. And I can ask them in the order I received them. Yeah, so in one line, anything that inspires you to work in the health space.
I can start. I think it's a very rewarding industry. You always, I think the success, and it can be very stressful at times, but at the end of the day, it's very rewarding, whether you're interacting with a different team, you're interacting with a different client. or you're working on your own projects, it's always to meet the end goal of providing care, providing a good product that will make an impact in someone's life. So I think that's it for me.
Yeah. Nick or Ben, would you like to add to that?
I think Betsy touched on a key word, which is impact. I mean, people will have different personal feelings about different fields of work, but to me, working on things that can impact human health, it's hard to imagine something more important or rewarding. So for me, that really is why I do what I do.
Yeah.
So
Thank
that
you.
would be my summary.
Yeah, Ben, would you like to say in one sentence what inspires you to work in the health? Yeah.
Yes, so I mean, it's basically the same sentiment as Bessie and Nick. It's, you know, we basically are a change of process. It go from Nick to Betsy and then go to me. And I think we are the final stage as the engineer who build the facility. Sometimes it's hard to see the actual end goal because we're working for a different client, but like at the time like this, the impact is actually fairly obvious because, you know, during the pandemic, our company actually have the privileges to work on multiple vaccine facility. We work for Pfizer, we have project with Moderna. We currently building one of the largest vaccine facility in the world. So that's like, if you put it in that sense, it's a very direct impact. Like we are playing a big part in keeping people safe, or, you know, making sure that we have enough vaccine for everyone during this hard time.
Yeah, sounds good. So it's, to summarize, it's the impact. And we have the first question from the audience, and it's open floor. So keep posting your questions. So is there anything that you wish you had known when you were at the stage where all the students are right now, or if any advice that you would have knowing your journey now as to what you would have done differently?
Don't get
I can take it.
discouraged. Oh, sorry.
Oh yeah, please. No, go right ahead, Betsy.
No, I was just saying, I think don't get discouraged. I think there's a lot of curriculum that is very easy to make you feel like you can't do it. They can be very discouraging times, but I think these are skills that you'll be able to apply outside of the department. And a lot of you're honing your thinking skills. So don't get discouraged and put a lot of pressure on yourself to either go one way or the other. I think organically you tend to find your path in whatever industry. So.
Yeah. Nick, you were saying something, or was it similar to what Betsy was saying?
Somewhat similar, I would say. So two things. I mean, one, which is maybe a bit more kind of a life journey topic, and then the other, which maybe is a bit more specific and technical. I mean, I wish I'd just tried more things that sounded fun when I was an undergrad, and then even when I was in grad school, and et cetera, et cetera. I mean, and now I have 2 young kids, so now there's less time for me to try fun things, and you know, experiment a bit with how you position yourself professionally or in your career, or what types of fields you work in. But I would say on the more technical side, and I even put this in my bio, is I wish I had developed more acumen in data science for my current role, as well as maybe some other things that pertain specifically to drug discovery. So if I could do it over again, I probably would have spent some more effort and attention there.
Okay, sounds good. That was helpful. So we have 2 questions in person. So if Elizabeth, if you could.
Yeah, I'll see if we can get these asked such that y'all can hear them. So let me know.
Yeah, sounds good.
So what would you say was the most difficult part about transitioning from being a student to being a professional? Was it easy to find a job? Was it hard to transition to a daily grind? What was it like?
Did everybody get that question, or should I repeat it?
It was a little quiet.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
so the question is
yeah.
basically like, how was the transition of being from a student to actually doing a job, and how easy or difficult was that transitioning of such different workspaces or even work-life balance, right?
I think I'm the most recent graduate, right? I think so. So I think the hardest part is when you get into the job, you think that because you spend 4 years in college learning so many things, and you think that you know something, but once you get into the job, then you realize that, okay, I do not know anything. So I think the most important thing to keep in mind is that whatever that you're learning right now, what it is actually preparing you is knowing to ask the right question rather than knowing the answer. Because just like, every job has different job description, every project has a different, skill that they require. But as long as you keep in mind that you have to continue to learn and to keep that attitude that I'm still learning this, even as a 10 years experienced engineer, people, the constant things that you would hear come out of their mouth is that I'm not an expert in this area. That means that they're still learning. So I think as long as you keep that attitude, it shouldn't be a problem, because every day you are a student, you're learning something new. Yeah, I think that's what I perceive.
Yeah, perfect. Elizabeth, do we want to move to the second question from the audience?
Yeah, I'll see if I can kind of position the mic a little bit more so Megan can get her question. Yo, Megan.
I know, Nick, I know you said that you had a graduate degree, and I think Betsy and Ben, I think you said you went straight into industry. What kind of influenced that decision, whether to move straight into industry or get a graduate degree? And how do you see that kind of influence, like your industry role and your industry workplace as a whole?
I think I can start out just from my personal experience. I started out straight into the industry. I've not considered, and this is just from what I've seen, I've not considered doing like a graduate role or going into graduate school. I've done some additional training that's more specific to my job. But I think it's especially in the health and medicine space, it's very common to see people gain some industry experience because they don't know what the network is. They don't know how the jobs are. And then they say, you know what, I am passionate into doing some sort of graduate work. I have plenty of friends from work that have done exactly that and have come back into the health and medicine space to pursue like a different role or have a different role in the industry within the same company even. So I think I think the health and medicine space specifically is very flexible in terms of those things.
Yeah, I can add also. It's it's not an easy decision. Maybe it wasn't for me. But some people might find it easy. Maybe they already know that they want to pursue a graduate degree. For me, I had a gap year after I graduated and continued to work in the field, and then decided to see the parts of it that I wanted to see and do the parts of it I wanted to do. I needed some more training. So that was a pretty big influence on my decision to enroll in a PhD program. But that's not the decision I think anyone should take lightly, right? Because it's a big commitment. But the best thing to do to influence that decision would be to talk to people that have the job you think you want, and you know, if you think that's the type of job you want, then figure out from them what they would recommend as far as the level of training and the type of path you have to take. So.
Yeah, Ben, would you like to add? I think you were about to say something.
Yeah, I was gonna say, you know, I'm actually right in the middle because you know, I got into industry immediately, but like every day I'm still considering, should I go back to graduate school? I mean, I've talked to Elizabeth more than once about this, but you know, like Nick said, it's a big decision. It's a big commitment, 5 years commitment. So I'm still thinking about it every day. But while on this job, I think it's a really good experience because this field, health and medicine, because of the change of production is very large that involves so many teams, and you know, it's strictly regulated. The more exposure you have on the entire process, how the drug from being developed to, you know, going to the patient, if you can have the whole view of that, it really helped to shape, you know, you decide where you want to be. And I think right now I'm still, you know, observing all of that, even after, you know, being 3-4 years in the job. So still thinking about it, and you know, it's never too late, so keep thinking about it, but do something eventually.
Yeah, yeah. So I think probably we'll move on to the last question, or maybe one more if we have time. So like very briefly, like what has helped you to make a good work-life balance as a chemical engineer?
Why no one
I
say
can take it. So that part's actually not been so hard. I think I guess it depends on the type of career or type of field. In a way, I mean, I know that my days now are very different than how I spent my days when I was in grad school or during my postdoc, right? Um, but I think that um, probably the most important thing you can do to try and find a good work-life balance, or one that suits you or that is a good fit for what you want, um, is when you go to apply for a job or go to apply to a training program or something like this, um, I would I would try rolling the dice a lot more times, maybe than I even did. And I kind of learned that throughout the course of my career. I mean, when I compare the number of, for example, the number of graduate programs that I applied to versus the number of postdocs that I applied to versus the number of jobs in the industry that I applied to, that number increased significantly so that I could have a lot of opportunities to see whether or not the type of organization I was joining is one where I could have the type of work-life balance I wanted, among other things, right? So I would plan ahead and dig deep and figure out what it is you want, and then try as many opportunities as you can to find the right sort of environment for you to find your career. Because getting involved in a situation and then trying to carve out your own work-life balance from there can sometimes be tricky, I think.
Yeah, sounds good. And we'll have one last question in the last 1 minute before we move to the rapid fire. Is there any additional training that you took apart from the ChemE training that you got for your first job? So Betsy or Ben, would you like to answer that?
I didn't take additional training for my first job, but I think through this job that I have now, I did take additional training, which is really ironically, Nick brought up having more of a data science background. That's exactly what's being applied. So yeah, I think that all of my additional training has been in that specific in my role.
Okay. Ben, would you like to add to that before we move to the rapid fire?
I think in terms of additional training, the one thing that I wish that our curriculum taught was how to use AutoCAD. That would be, I mean, not just, like, even just familiarize ourselves with AutoCAD would have been a great tool, but I use that on a day-to-day basis, and I actually have to took additional course and then basically learn on the job. It's not one of those programs that you can just open and then figure out what it is. You need a specific task to know what it is that you need.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah, sounds good. So now we'll move on to rapid fire, where I'll ask a question and we'll just take 1 or 2 word responses from each panelist. Okay, so we can probably move in the order that we did the introduction. So or we can, like Betsy, Nick, and Ben, so we can do it in that order. So when you think of your ChemE degree and where you are now, what's that 1 word that comes to your mind that connects your ChemE degree and where you are now?
I'm gonna go with lasting.
Okay, Nick.
Entropy.
Okay, Ben.
teamwork.
Okay, perfect. So what's the best piece of advice you ever received?
Ask for help.
Okay, Betsy.
Take it a day at a time.
Nick.
Stay humble.
Perfect. And what is the environment, or what is the best environment that you think has contributed to your success?
I'm gonna say a workplace with good culture, so humility and teamwork.
Humility and teamwork. Okay. Ben?
I would say Nan's Lab. Elizabeth really showed me what is a good team looks like, and you should aim for that.
Perfect. Kudos to that. And Nick?
I think working in an interface or interdisciplinary area where everyone admits freely the limitations of their capabilities and knowledge, and everyone forgives everyone else for those gaps.
Perfect. That was fantastic. So I think that concludes our panel, and yeah, I really thank all the panelists and all the participants for being here, and it was really fun, and it was really informative to hear your perspective.